Hello and welcome back to Pay Down Debt Solution. My name is Jen, and on this channel, we teach you how to get out of debt. And we teach you how to get out of debt much faster than you are working in the traditional system. Many of you out there are trying to get yourself out of debt, something that I know something about because both my husband and I found ourselves as business owners in a lot of debt a few years ago. And we struggled with making payments just as all of you do until we learned a different way. And that different way is velocity banking. So today we're going to bring credit cards back in the forefront and we're going to discuss when you have credit card debt or any debt for that matter, how you can work your debt down using that same tool, the credit card. So credit cards are often a popular topic. We find ourselves in a lot of credit card debt. We know that the all-time high for Americans in credit card debt is in 2025. And so finding ourselves there, we need to learn how to do banking a different way because you know what, you guys, when you keep making your minimum payments, you will be in debt forever. And I know from experience that most of you have no idea how long it will take you to term out that debt and to get it paid off. Okay. So a lot of you out there have no idea what is going on and when you're going to be paid off. If you have a loan, yeah, sometimes you know what the term date is on that. But when it comes to credit cards, people don't really take a good look at how long it's going to take you. So I'm going to solve that problem for you today. We're going to see and learn how to calculate your debt to find out how long it's going to take you. A lot of times it'll be on your statement, but you guys can just go to one of the online calculators to find out and you will know the length of time and you will be surprised. So we are going to shorten that time today and we're going to discuss credit cards and different strategies to use your own credit cards against themselves to pay them off faster. So surviving and still thriving with credit card debt becomes important because you can do that. You can do it all day long. Credit card debt isn't the problem. That's not the problem, you guys. The problem is we have prolonged our debt problem or made it worse by how we are trying to solve it. If you are banking in the traditional banking system, meaning you put your paycheck in a checking account and when your bills come due, you're paying them out of your checking account, you're using that debit card and you're debiting money and it's coming right off the top out of that checking account. When you have debts like this, okay, like my example today, when you have credit card debts, it doesn't serve you as well as running your income through that credit card. So I'm going to show you a new way of doing banking that will have you out of that credit card debt faster than you can imagine. So Americans are buying more using credit cards. And I know you find that because most Americans are doing this. They're using credit cards to buy groceries and gas, and not because they're using it to get points. Some of them are, but a lot of them are doing it because they can't make ends meet, and that credit card is patching them through from paycheck to paycheck. So we know that Americans are buying more using credit cards, and these cards are taking longer to pay down. It is a vicious cycle if you don't have enough cash flow to pay them down. And cash flow is what we will work with and what we always work with when it comes to velocity banking. So we can help with this, right? We can help, we can do it without any of these things. We can get you out of debt without a consolidation loan, without refinancing your house for cash out. We can do it without taking a 401k loan. We can take it without even using a home equity loan or line or a 0% balance transfer. We can get you guys out of debt using the tool that you feel got yourself into the debt, and that is the credit card. So let's take a look at how credit cards could be structured. So we can pay off our cards faster by restructuring the payment. So how do you do that, right? That's the question. How do you do that? So my example today is if you have income, okay, and currently when your income comes in, it's going to go into that checking account, right? Like I just described, it's going to go into the checking account and you're going to pay all of your bills out of that checking account. You might even be using your debit card to buy groceries and gas, okay? And some of you, after that happens, are going to the credit card to finish making your payments or to finish making your purchases because you don't always have the extra money between paychecks, okay? So what we propose is doing your banking a little bit different, and that is by running all of your available income through that credit card as a payment and then using that credit card to pay off what you owe, okay, or to pay for the goods and services that you need to purchase. All right. So here's my example. You have income. Your income is going to come in, and instead of going to the checking account It is going to come in and it is going to be parked onto your credit card, or you're going to be making a payment of your income onto that credit card. Okay. And so what happens from there is your bills get paid, your living expenses get paid, your loans and credit cards get paid. They don't though. We cannot pay loans and credit cards with a credit card. So we have to do something a little bit different while we're running a strategy like this. So there are certain things that you will have to hold out, certain payments, I should say, that you will have to hold out and leave in your checking account. And the reason being because you can't pay loans and other credit cards through a credit card. So you're wondering now, you're scratching your head and you're saying, but Jen, if all of my debt is credit cards and I can't pay for my credit cards with a credit card, why would I want to do this? And the answer is simple. The answer is all about your average daily balance and what that income does to help free up cash flow to you. All right. So let's take a look. Again, income comes in, you park it onto that credit card, right? You make a payment of your available income onto this card. Then you're going to pay your bills. Then you're going to pay your living expenses. And what you have held out into your checking account, you've left it out of the income that you put on that card. You're going to then pay for your loans and lines, the things that you can't pay through a credit card. Okay. So you're going to, again, pay all of your bills and living expenses with this card because you've parked your available income onto it. And when you do that, you can do all of your income that is available to you, right? We have available income here, and I'm about to explain to you how to figure your available income. So you cannot pay for loans and credit cards with a credit card, and you cannot pay non-chargeable expenses on a credit card. So what's an example of a non-chargeable expense besides, right, our loans and lines? Well, sometimes you have certain bills that they will not allow to be paid with a credit card. So you have to pay it either through your checking account or they automatically debit it or you have to walk in and pay, okay? So there are some bills that you would also have to hold out of your credit card payments, right? Your bills and living expenses. Sometimes there are bills that you can't pay, so then you leave that in your checking account. Okay. So what does this look like, right? What does this look like big picture? And how is this going to help you when you're sitting in credit card debt and you have all this credit card debt and you can't pay anything else onto that credit card because you're pretty close to maxed, right? Well, that's the example that I have for you guys today, all right? When you make your income payment, okay, that payment has to be broken down into what is available, okay? So your available income is what you have to calculate. So for my example here, I have done that. We have available income, and that is all of your income, okay, that comes in minus the non-chargeable expenses. So it's my income, and in my example here is $4,600 of my income minus my non-chargeable expenses. Okay, so it's going to be minus those non-chargeable expenses, except for the one card charge that I'm going to be using. All right, so if the card that I'm going to be using is a Capital One card and it is for $7,000 is the limit on that card, but yet I'm at $6,710, all right, and I owe $150 a month on that $150, I don't have to hold that out of my income like I do the other charges because I'm going to be using this card as my debt destroyer. So that debt destroyer payment comes back, right? So it's all in the restructuring. I'm restructuring because my income is going to go on my card that becomes my debt destroyer. And the payment of the $150 that I would normally have to pay, I don't hold it out because it's going to be part of my income going in, okay? So the other expenses that I would have to hold out of my income are the $152 and the $102 from my other two cards, all right? So that's what I'm showing you here. I've got my income of $4,600. I have my 213, which is my mortgage and my two cars, right? Or I should say this couple's cars. And then I have broken it down into the expenses that are going to come off, okay? So holding these out, those go into my checking account. All of this income goes in that is left over to me after that. And what is it? It's $2,333. Again, my all of my income, right? 4,600 minus what I have to hold out, the 2013, right, for the mortgage and the 2 cars. And I'm holding out my 152 from this credit card that I am not using as my debt destroyer. And I'm holding out the 102 from the other credit card that is not my debt destroyer, which leaves me with an income of $2,333. All right. So now we've established the income that I am putting onto my credit card. It is going to be $2,333. Okay. And I'm paying my bills and my living expenses out of that, except for these, which I have held out of my income. Now, we also have to break things out into chargeable and non-chargeable expenses. Okay, so we know what we can use for purchases on that credit card or for payments on that credit card. Okay, so we take our expenses, our total expenses, which is $45.60. So my chargeable expenses are equal to my $45.60, which is my total expenses, minus what I have to hold out into my, or what I have to hold out of my expenses, right? So I'm holding out the 2013 from my mortgage and 2 cars, right? And I'm holding out all of these payments here. So I'm holding out the 404, which equals 2143. Now, the reason I am holding out all of these non-chargeables is exactly that, the word non-chargeable. These, no matter how you look at it, are always non-chargeable, okay? So your non-chargeables are always non-chargeable. They will never, ever be chargeable. So when I'm giving myself back income, right, it's because I'm using it as a debt destroyer, okay, or I've rolled one card onto another, and then those payments come back to me as income, okay, because I don't have to hold them out any longer. So that is how we are going to be running our strategy. That's how we're going to be working down our card, by putting the available income into the card. So now what does that do for us? Well, that drops our balance immediately. So if I put $2,333 on my debt destroyer, which is sitting at $67.10, I'm going to drop it down to at least 4, if not less than that, right? I haven't done the math on that in my head. But it's going to immediately drop my balance, which means that my interest then for the month is going to be lower, because I started out at the 67.10, I put my income in, and I've dropped it down to right around 4,000. So the interest on 7,000 versus 4,000 is different, right? It's less than that. So using your credit card by putting your income into it and then charging your expenses out, you are lowering your interest, okay? By putting a big chunk onto that card, that you're using as your debt destroyer, and dropping your interest, working your income through, and you will be doing this month over month over month. So what happens is this comes back to me as cash flow, along with the cash flow that I have as cash flow from my expenses, and that helps me work my balance down. That is how velocity banking works. So I'm going to show you an example of this mathematically on the board, but let's go over the student scenario before I do that. So I've already kind of given you a hint here. We have our income going into our credit card. We're paying our bills and our living expenses out of it. Okay, so we already know that I'm probably going to be using this Capital One card because I just showed it to you. So we have a student of ours that have an income of 4,600. They have total expenses of 4,560. So they're really tight. They have a positive cash flow, but it's not positive by much. So they are looking for ways that they can return cash flow to them without having to go out and get a second job, without having to, have a side hustle of some sort, right? Or getting a new job altogether to try to, raise that income, or refinancing their house and taking cash out, or consolidating all of their debts into another loan, right? They're trying to find other ways to do this. And so we're going to do that through their credit cards, through lines of credit. So they have, like I said, a cash flow, at least it's positive, but it's $40. Their mortgage is for $11.92 a month. Car 1 is for $423. Car 2 is for $398. And so that equals 2013. So those are part of my non-chargeable expenses, right? I can't charge them, okay? So they have to be held out. Now, we then have a Capital One card. It is at $6,710 is the balance. $150 a month is what I'm paying for that, or I should say they are paying. 26% is our interest rate. It's going to take 13 years and 7 months, and it will cost them $17,649 in interest debt when they are done paying that through the traditional banking system of putting your money into your checking account and paying your bills through your checking account, right? Wrong, because we're not doing that anymore. Okay, now this card, and I'm showing you guys the limit. So it's pretty close to the limit. The limit's $7,000, they owe $6,710. So our Chase Freedom card here has a limit of $5,000. They have $4,922 on that card. The payment is $152. It is at a 25% interest rate. It'll take 4 years and 11 months to pay that back the traditional way. It'll cost them $3,355, again, to pay it traditionally. Then we have US Bank. The limit on that is 3.5K. Their balance is $33.10. Their payment is $102. It's at 22%. And it would take them 8 years and 11 months, and they will pay $4,228 in interest by the time they pay that off. So what are our totals? We have $14,942 in credit card debt. We owe a total of $404 in these payments for these credit cards, and it will cost them $25,232 to pay this all off in the traditional banking system. So we are not going to do that. We are going to formulate a plan, okay? What is our plan? Now, when you work with us and work our strategy, we have a 3-step strategy. It is to organize, identify, and implement. Number one, the first thing and foremost, what you're going to do is you're going to organize all of your debt. So you're going to know down to the penny what you have coming in and what you have going out, okay? So in this case, we already know, right? Because we have our available income that we're putting onto this card. We've already calculated that. We've already figured out what card we're going to use. And I told you that it was our Capital One card, okay? Now, there's different ways you're going to go about this, okay? There's different ways you're going to discover and figure out which card you're going to use as your debt destroyer. And there could be a bunch of different factors. Now, the cool thing is, with our course and our software that you get with it, it does all the math for you. So you guys don't have to run any of those numbers, but you should know where they come from, okay? And so that's what I'm going to go over with you now. We chose Capital One in this case with them because it had the highest limit. Now, as you can see, we typically go for the highest payment amount. And because there's only a $2 difference, I chose to go with the Capital One, which had the higher limit, so that we could hopefully work these cards down faster, okay? So what we do then is we use this as our debt destroyer, and we start putting all of our income into that card that is, of course, available to us. So you can see these are my real numbers, okay? So these are the real numbers that they're going to work with. They start with their $4,600 in income. They're going to subtract off the non-chargeables, the mortgage and the 2 car payments. They're going to subtract off the card that they're not using because that has to be held out into the checking account to pay. They're also going to subtract off this US Bank card because that has to be held off into the checking account to pay alongside our debt destroyer, okay? So now what's going to happen is we're going to put all of our available income into this debt destroyer of $6,710, and we're going to start working that down until we can make another move. So I am going to erase this board, and I am going to show you step by step by step what we're going to do. And yes, we are going to start with our Capital One card, getting back $150 to us. And then the question is, what do we do next? So this is our Chase Freedom card. As you can see, after 24 months, so let me go to 24 months right here. So we're right at the bottom here. After 24 months, our balance is $34.01. Our debt destroyer, which is the Capital One card, at 24 months was $45.27. So $45.27 plus the $34.01 is going to be more than the $7,000 limit that we have. So we can't choose this card, okay? There's no great way to make this card work, even though its payment is going to be larger at $152 than our US Bank payment at $102. it actually makes sense to use the US bank card because at 24 months, there's enough room to bring over that card and put it on our Capital One card. So sometimes you can't always go after the largest payment, even though you would like to, because obviously you're going to get more payment back to you. But in this case, the 102 makes more sense because we can get another reduction in our payment, right? So we can get more income back to us quicker than we could if we were to use the Chase Freedom card. Okay, so in order to prove why I did what I did as far as moving money around, if I take my US bank, and that it starts at 3310, right, at the beginning of when we start our pay down, and we let this go for 24 months so that we can try to fit it into our debt destroyer. So if we go down to 24 months, you can see that it is at, let's see, where is it? 24 months is at 2078. Okay, so 2078, we can fit that into our Capital One card that is at the, let's see, what is it at? That's at the 4527. So 4527 plus the 2078 is 6605. And remember, we have a balance transfer fee, and that's going to be at 4%. So we figure 4%, kind of as rule of thumb because it's right in the middle, and that's what I'm seeing a lot of is 4%. So if it's at 4%, we know that it's going to be about an $83 transfer fee, right? So $83 because I'm taking the 2078 times 0.04 gives me 83, which is just the simplest way to calculate it. It's actually an algebraic problem. However, this is the simplest way to calculate it, and it's right almost 100% of the time. Not always, but it's pretty close. You'll probably never go over if you calculate it that way. Okay, so that is why I did I moved the money the way that I did, and I'm bringing in the US bank card first before that Chase Freedom card. Okay, so you guys just saw the cutaway that I did where I showed you where I get my numbers as I've picked one debt destroyer at a time. And also the logic behind why I picked the debt destroyer that I did. The beautiful thing about velocity banking, you guys, you can always make your choices. You can always make those changes. And those choices are which card you're going to use for your debt destroyer. Use what is most comfortable for you, right? And you're going to work your numbers down to figure out which one is most advantageous. We like to go after the interest, saving you the most amount of interest. And many times, yes, that's going to be incorporating the largest payment. But again, I gave you the logic for why I picked the 150 over the 152, knowing that this is my higher available limit, okay, a higher limit. And as I work it down, I can pull other cards into that because the limit is larger. So that is why I chose that. So let's work from this side of the board back over here, and we can go ahead and work down and show you what this couple's results will be if they just used credit cards. Now, in their case, they also have an ability to use a line of credit, a home equity line of credit, but if they choose not to do that, this is exactly how it would go, okay? Now, remember, we're going to put our income in. It's what's available. Our available income is going to go to our debt destroyer, and our debt destroyer in this case is our Capital One card, okay? So that's our debt destroyer. So available income starts off at $2,333, which I have depicted over here for you. So we have $6,710, which is the balance of this Capital One card. And we have the $2,333 that we're putting in as income. When that income gets made as a payment to the card, think of it that way, made as a payment to the card, it drops our balance immediately to $4,377, which means the interest that I am paying is much less because it is not going to ride out at $6,710. Because instead of making a $150 payment, I have now made a $2,333 payment, and I've satisfied the payment that I would have had to owe for the Capital One card because my income went in as a payment. So that's how you get your payments back to you, okay? Now, once I do that, I then have to, now you guys, any of you that decide to purchase our software, you will not have to do these calculations, but again, you should know where they come from, and I will show you then how you're going to calculate the interest for yourself. So we're going to take our high balance, we're going to add it to our low balance, okay? Because remember, credit cards are figured on an average daily balance. So we need to get that average, okay? So we need to get that average so we know what interest we will be responsible for at the end of the month. So I take my high balance, my 6710, I add it to my low balance of 4377, and we're going to divide by 2. Again, what is that? That is the average. All right, so let's do it. So we've got 6710. We're going to add the 4377, which equals 1187. I'm going to divide that by 2, which equals 5543. And then I'm going to multiply that 5543 by my interest rate, which is the 0.26, okay? Which gives me 1,441, okay? And I then divide that by 12, and that, quite beautifully, gives us the 120, okay? So that's where this 120 comes from. Now, you're going to calculate this out for you until you get to a point where you can pull in your next card. Now, you have to remember something. When you guys are sitting there with high balances, okay, you have high balances, your limits, you're close to being maxed on everything, chances are you aren't going to get a 0% card, right? You might not get a 0% card, so that's why we don't always work with them. We show you that you can do this without a 0% balance transfer. Now, in this case here, we're going to work down just our debt destroyer, which is the Capital One card. All right, we're going to work that down until we get to a point where we can pull in the next card. And in this case, as I showed you in the previous screen, the US Bank card. Now, all of your balances are lower at this point because we do this at the 24-month mark, okay? Now, this card alone, running it down would take a lot longer than 24 months. But as soon as we can, we are going to pull in the US Bank card or the next card that I would choose. And in this case, it's going to be the US Bank card, which I explained to you, because it's low enough that we can pull it into our debt destroyer, which is the Capital One card, knowing that the limit is 7,000, all right? If I were to do the Chase card, I wouldn't have been able to as soon. I would have had to continue to go and work it down. Now, the reason I want to get another card over here as soon as I can is so I get another income that comes back to me. So I get more available income back to me. So US Bank, I'm going to get back 102, right? So let's look at this. At 24 months, here's our 24-month mark. Our balance on our Capital One card, working that down through income in and expenses out as our debt destroyer, is at 4,527. That's the balance it's at 24 months, all right? Now, and during that time, I've paid $2,377 in interest working it this way. At the same time, remember, I'm still running US Bank and Chase, okay? So they're still running. So now at that 24-month mark, I'm going to then pull in my US Bank balance, which is now down to $2,078, okay? And during that time it was running, I've spent in 24 months on the US Bank card $1,216 in interest. So then when I bring this $2,078 over from US Bank onto my Capital One card, I will then have to pay a balance transfer fee, which in this case, I'm just assuming 4% because we see a lot of 4%. So that's what I've done, just taken 4%. So the easiest way to calculate that, again, you guys, is just to take the 2,078, multiply it by your percentage, and that gives you $83. It's an algebraic equation technically, but that's the easiest way to do it. So when you add these two together, 6,605 plus the $83 that would cost us to do this, all right, we end up with $6,688. So then we've gotten back that 102, haven't we? We sure have. So now our available income is not $2,333. It is now $2,435. So our balance then is dropped to $42.53. So then we have to calculate our interest. We already know our chargeable expenses, they don't change, they're fixed, right? They're non-chargeables are always non-chargeable, so therefore our chargeables in this case will be the same, okay? So that we're not eliminating from there, we're adding back here instead. So our interest is $118. How did I figure that? I added my high balance, I added to my low balance, added them together, averaged them out, multiplied by my 0.26 to get, and then I divided that by that number, which is the annual fee, right? By 12 to get 118. So if I were to do that, it would be 6688 plus 4253 equals 10941. And I'm going to then divide that by 2, which equals 5,470. I'm going to multiply that by my interest rate, which gives me for the year 1422. I can't read backwards. And then I divide that by 12 to give me my 118. There's my 118. Okay. And I continue to run these two cards together, right? It's now rolled. So I've rolled my US Bank into this. I'm running these down, and I do that for 12 more months. And then what happens? Okay. What happens is my Chase card has been running 36 months. It is now down to $2,308, which means I can then roll that into my balance, which of these two cards is at 4,330. Okay. So now that I have my 4,330, I can go ahead and add my 2,308. I can add those two together. So I get 6,638. And then I'm going to add to it my 92, right? Because I have that balance transfer. So I'm going to add the 92 in. So that means I'm starting with 6,730. It is below my limit. So I'm good, right? 6,730. And then my income comes back in. And you can see I've given myself another raise, right? Because this card, the Chase card, is 152. So there's my raise, okay? And I'm going to work this down for 12 more months. 12 more months. Okay, so what I want you guys to remember is while you're working these three cards down, yes, one is your debt destroyer, but we've gone 2 years now, right? Just before we can roll other things in. We've gone 2 years, then we go 12 months, then we go 12 months. So that's right. So we've got, involved here is what, 20. So that's 4 years, right? So we have 4 years total. Now, your balances and your limits are not high anymore at this point, right? Because you've already paid your balances down. So that is why we are able to, after 2 years, roll this 2,078 in, okay? Because typically, once you get all those balances down, you're going to be able to do that balance transfer, okay? So you'll be able to transfer it over. Now, you may not get a 0%. They may transfer it over at the same rate, but that's fine, right? Because that's what we've done here, is we've taken it at the same rate. And so you'll see what the worst case scenario should be, okay? So we know that it took us 24 months here. It took us, so we went to 24 months here, and then at 12 months, the combined US Bank and debt destroyer ended up being 4,330. Then, so that was a total of 36 months. So that's where I'm getting the interest for the Chase as 36 months, because 12 months there, 12 months here, 36. At that point, we roll it into here and it works its way down. It takes us 12 months and we go and add 903 in interest. So let's take a look at all of this together. Now, we know that if we were to run it in the traditional banking system, right, it would have taken us 13 years to get out of all of it, okay? 13 years took us the longest, 4 years, 8 years, and then you would have spent $25,232 in interest debt, right? Okay, so this has taken us clearly 4 years, right? So what does it cost us then? What does it cost us? Well, let's take a look. If we add up all of our interest, okay, so what do we have? We have the 2377. So we've got 2377. Okay, so that's this interest. We have this interest here, the 1216. We've got that one. And then where's our next interest? Right here is 1146. And then our last interest is 2859. We're going to add these up to find out what, 2859. I've got one more though, don't I? I've got the 903 that I almost forgot. Okay, so we'll put 903 in there. Can't forget that one, or it would be cheating. All right, so we add this up. So we end up with 8501. is our total interest that we have spent. Now, this took us 4 years. This took us minimally over here 4 years and 11 months, okay? We couldn't have even rolled this payment into anything else for almost 5 years, correct? Here, we were able to do it much faster. We rolled in those payments, we got those payments back to us. We used them as our available income and worked down our debt. So, you guys do not have to get your consolidation loans. You do not have to get a home equity line or loan if you don't want to. You don't have to get a personal line of credit if you don't want to. You can do all of this through your checking. Through your credit cards, right? Don't do it through your checking account. You have to hold stuff out into your checking account until those are gone, right? So I would say our plan was a pretty good plan. We used credit cards to get ourselves out of credit card debt. We took the payments, we rolled those payments into our available income, and we worked down our debt much faster with nothing but the credit cards that had them in $25,232 of interest debt if you termed it out. Hope you guys have learned something today. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.